this is what we are going to make today, a nice scrolling text that can even be put in a canvas in world space. So let's say I change the rotation of this canvas and it still works perfectly in any dimension. If I change the position of this, it will still work. So yeah, how does this work? So basically we start out with a mask. So this right here is the mask. The way you do it is you have a text, a normal rect transform, you put a rect mask 2D on it, and now like the width and the height define the mask width and height. And anything, I mean, first we go to the text and make sure that maskable is enabled, but then anything that is inside of this mask will be shown and everything outside will be cut off. So once I click start, we will create 2 more clones of the same text, exactly the same. And as you can see, the only thing that happens is that we put them on the right side of the last text. So this is the first one, this is the first clone, and this is the second clone. And then we simply put them, cycle them to the left on update. Or, yeah, we just put them to the left on update. And then once the right side of this text leaves this here, it will be put at the end of the last text. And the nice thing about this is I made it so it automatically calculates the necessary clones. So let's just say we have only a very short word. Now, 2 more clones wouldn't actually fill up this whole space right here, so we need more clones. But I don't want to type in the amount of clones every single time. So I just set a max amount here of like 15. You could also put this to 500 or maybe 5,000, but that would be a bit bad for performance. Not that it should ever happen. So basically it fills up, it automatically calculates the clones necessary to fill up this whole space. And this is just a limit because it's using a while loop, and having no limit on a while loop is always dangerous. It can break the whole application. So that's just why there's some max clones. And then there's a scroll speed just for changing the scroll speed. So I split this tutorial into 3 steps. The first step is just creating the clones. This one, scrolling text 1. The second step will be making them actually move to the left, and then putting the ones that leave the mask on the end again, so cycling through. And the last step will be a bonus of being able to change the text during runtime. So let's get started with the first step. What we will need first is a reference to the text object we already created. So on awake, let's grab the transform of the first child that we find. And then we cast it as a rect transform. You could also do get component rect transform, but I think this looks a bit cooler. So we cast it, and then what we will need is a list. So if you think about it, we will be using the first and the last object in a list a lot, not the rest. So a linked list is a nice performant way of doing this. Linked list has an option of add first, add last, or remove first, remove last. It's basically just faster than a list at doing this kind of stuff. So it's useful for this one. You could also just use a list. It doesn't really matter. It's just a performance thing. Okay, next. What we will need later is the text preferred width. The reason we need this is the text preferred width is basically here. This yellow line right here is the preferred width. This only works because I have a content size fitter here. If I disable this, and let's just say I change the text, let's disable it and change the text to be longer. Now you might think this is the preferred width now, but it actually isn't. The preferred width is going to be here. So the content size fitter is just there to show you how, like, to give you a good example. It's not necessary, and if it's not necessary, you shouldn't use it. Okay, let's continue. We get the preferred width of the first transform we just added to the list. Not the most performant way, to be honest, but this is just cleaner and it's just on awake once. And then the next step is to create the actual clones of the text. We can't have a scrolling text if we just have one text going to the left. Then there's nothing to fill up the space when it's gone. Okay. Let's create some clones. So all we will do is we need a number of necessary clones. We will calculate this in a second, but what we will do with them, for each of these clones that's necessary, we will instantiate a copy of the first transform we have added to the list. And we will put the parent object to be this transform, so it's cleaner. And then there will be a function to attach the transform at the end, because they have to be moved to the right. And then we will add this transform to the list, so at last. So the way calculate necessary clones works, it looks at the mask transform. So if you look at this is what I explained earlier. This is the rect mask, and it basically looks at the width. So this is the mask width, and it looks at the whole width of it and basically sees how many texts can fit in there, except for the main text that we have. Like, it doesn't, we always need at least 2 of them. Even if this text was very long and would fill up the whole mask, even then we need a second one, so that once this one leaves the mask, the first one, the second one can fill the empty space. So what we will do is, we do a do-while loop. You could also do a for, you could do a while, it doesn't really matter, but I think this is the cleanest way to do it. So, and also I've never done a do-while before in game dev, so I'm kind of proud of this one. So we always need one clone at least. So clones, we add to the clones, and we need a max clones now, because if you use as I said before, if you use a while loop, let's say you had no text at all, then how would you fill up the empties? How would you fill up 76 with nothing? It would be infinite. So that's why we have this loop. It says scrolling text stopped after 15 clones, increase the limit if necessary. This is what I wrote in here, just so it doesn't break the whole game. So let's enable this. And I just set this this nice tag here to 1, so you can't break it. Okay. So now we have a limit, and if it doesn't reach, like every single time, it will check if the current amount of clones times the preferred width of the text is bigger or equal than 1. So let's say we have 2 clones, and 2 clones fit perfectly into this thing here. It's even bigger than that, then we would leave and return 2 clones. Okay. Now this gives us the clones, but we need one more thing for the first step, and this is to attach the newly created transforms, so all of these clones, at the end of the last transform we added to the list. So let's do this. It works pretty simple. We grab the last transform in the list and take its local position x. We need the local position because we want this to work in 3D space. Like I showed you before, we want to be able to rotate the text or maybe change its position, and that only works if you use local space. And then you can just move the canvas. So we grab that position, and now we need the, like if the position of this text, the anchor point is set to the left. This is actually very important, I forgot to show you this. You have to set the anchor point of your text object first by clicking Shift here and then clicking Alt again, so the position is set to the left and the anchor also. And now it uses the position it uses is always where the anchor point is. So it would be here, but we want the right side of the text. So we will add the text length, the preferred width, to this position. So that's what we are doing here. We have the position, and then we add the text preferred width to it, and this will be the new position of the transform. And that's it. We don't actually need this. I forgot to remove this. Okay, let's see what it does, or if it even works. This is just a show off. This is the first one we just created. This is the scrolling text one. Let's see if it works. So we click, and it created 2 clones, and they are set perfectly. So they are set on the position plus the width of the last object. And now after we added this one, this will be the new last object. So the next one uses this one, this position plus the preferred width. So now we have some nice clones. and they are positioned correctly, but in order for this to be a scrolling text, we need to scroll the text. So that's step 2. Scrolling text 2. Okay, I commented out all of the stuff that will be added here, so not too much. So the way this works on update, every single update we want to move all the transforms to the left in the same amount. And we will use a scroll speed for that. I just had a nice range attribute here, but you don't need this. You can also just serialize it normally. This is just so it looks a bit nicer in the editor. Okay, so move transforms is very simple. First, we calculate the distance that each transform will move to the left each frame. So this will be the scroll speed. I multiplied it by 30. You don't have to do this. This is just so it's a bit nicer in the editor too, so you don't have to use a big value like 100 or something, but you can use maybe 3 instead. And we multiply it, this is important, by time.delta time, so it's frame rate independent. Next, we apply this distance we just calculated. We divide it from the current position of each local transform, from each transform's local position. We don't divide it, we subtract it, because we want to move to the left and not to the right. Now they are moving obviously, but they are not they are not set to the end of the last. They are not set to the end again. So let's do that. This is what this one is supposed to do. We only ever have to check the leftmost transform, because the leftmost transform is the only one that can leave the mask at any time. So we grab the first in the list. The first transform will always be the leftmost. And if it's X position, so if it's left, remember we have a pivot point on the left. So if this position here, we don't actually have to check the position of the mask directly. We can just check if it is smaller or equal to 0, because let me show you. If this moves to the left and it is here, this right here is where the pivot point is, so this will be 0. So this plus this, if this is 0 or less, right now it is probably less, then we move it to the right. So the way this works is, we grab the position of the last transform in the list, so the rightmost. Then we grab the node of the first transform in the list. You can also just grab the transform itself, but I just grabbed the node. Like the linked list has linked list nodes, and they contain the thing that we put inside. They contain a value. I could also just do first.value, and then we would have a rect transform. But this might be a bit faster, I don't even know. Doesn't really matter. And what we do with this, we calculate the rect transform's local position of the one we want to remove, and we add to it the position of the last transform plus its width. So again, it will be the right side of the rightmost transform. This will be the new position, and the new position is always on the left, because we set the pivot of these transforms to the left. I hope that makes sense. And right, we set the position, then we have to put the first transform at the last position in the list. So we remove the first and we say at last. And this is why it's a linked list, because we do a lot of this remove first, at last. So it's just a bit faster maybe. Let's see if it works. Let's make this a bit faster. Yeah, seems to work. They're not flying out of screen anymore. Nice. So now we are basically done. We have a scrolling text. It works perfectly. You can set a maximum amount of clones. You can increase this to any number you want. It will calculate the necessary clones to fill up the screen, the mask I mean. So the last thing is a bonus. You don't have to use this, it's optional. So you can end the video now if you want, but it's a pretty nice feature to have. So if you want to change the text during runtime, it's a bit difficult. So what I did basically is, I thought of an easy way, of the easiest way to change the text. And I came up with this. So I basically just expose, like whenever you want to change the text mesh, I just expose the text mesh. You grab this, this property here. And what it does is it grabs the first text mesh pro UGUI from this text transforms list. So it's always the leftmost. There is a reason for why it's the leftmost. I will come to this in a second. But you can change the parameters of this in any way you want. So you can change any parameter you normally can on the Text Mesh Pro. And then you just have to call update clones. So update clones, what it does is it grabs the first transform from the list and removes it from the list. The reason is because the easiest way to do this is just to destroy all of the clones and get new ones, basically. So this is what we're going to do. We grab what we need one of them so we can clone it again later. So this is the first one that we changed before with this. We updated the first one, and then if it is called instantly, this is why you have to say call it directly after modifying the text mesh. So we grab the first one, remove it from the list, we destroy all the others in the list, we clear the list, and we add the first one again. And then what we simply do is we need to recalculate the text preferred width. For this we take this first transform again, and then we simply create clones. So we just call the method we created before, and it will create the clones that we need, and that's it. So let's see this in action. I created a script for this. So if I press QWE, we will first get a new text, and then we will update the clones, or we will call this method. And there's one important thing. Let's say I want to have some spaces here. So hello and a lot of spaces. Let's see if this works. So there are no spaces. Why are there no spaces? I don't know. But what I figured out is if you wanted to have spaces at the end of the text, you can add the \t. I think it's a tab or something, but the interesting thing is the tab doesn't actually show up. Like this is removed from the string, but for some reason the spaces are now kept because they're not at the end of the text anymore, if that makes sense. So now, if I press Q, there will be spaces. For some reason, don't ask me why. If you know why, then please tell me. And if I press W, we have a very short text. And as you can see, it works, but the problem is now we don't have enough clones because the clone limit is too low. So let's set it higher to maybe 30. Let's do this again, W. Now it works. We just have a bunch of clones now. It's not very performant, to be honest. I mean, this is fine. The instantiating is a bit costly, but not the actual moving them to the left and cycling. And if I press E, now this is a very long text, and now we just have 2 clones. Yeah, and that's it. If you like this tutorial, please subscribe. Maybe write a comment. If you have any questions, I will answer them in the comments. And if you have anything you want to know or any tutorial you want to see, you can also just write me a comment. Yeah, thanks for watching.